okay, if this movie isn't going to have Will Smith in it, then we're just going to have to do the best we can with this review. I've got my Hancock t-shirt on, right? I've got my iRobot DVD over here, which to me is one of his best performances. It's one of my personal favorites. And, all right, here we go. This is old, new, and now playing. Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now Playing, your time machine through the world of movies. I'm your host, Will Robinson Smith, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, it's been 20 years since Independence Day first hit theaters, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have been really looking forward to a sequel to this movie. I've been jazzed about it for about half a week or so since I saw the first Independence Day, but still, been looking forward to this movie. And before we head off and talk about alien invasions and all that goodness, let's talk about the future of our own movies with our movie news segment, The Rundown.
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
Left.
Come on!
All of you who are Star Wars fans out there are probably aware by this point that the next installment in the franchise, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, breaks the tradition of episodes and goes back and tells the story of how the rebels stole the plans to the first Death Star. That said, it was pretty safe to assume that Darth Vader would be making some kind of appearance in this movie. Well, not only did Entertainment Weekly fully confirm that this week, but they confirmed that James Earl Jones will indeed step into the recording studio one more time to bring us that iconic voice. When asked about what we can expect from Vader, Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy said, "He will be in this movie sparingly, but at a key, strategic moment, he's going to loom large. But as far as his presence for both the Rebels and the Empire, he's more like a mythical figure." EW talked with director Gareth Edwards about Vader's place in the world at this point. He said, "Within the Rebellion, it's not commonly spoken about. Within the Empire, there is a culture of knowing of the existence of Darth Vader. There's definitely an underlying feeling that there is a power, a dark power, available to the Empire, and that if you overstep your mark, you will suffer the consequences. Also, if you're not a fan of James Earl Jones' voice acting, then we probably can't be friends." I'm just kidding. Sort of. But anyway, it is really nice to have James Earl Jones come back to this role and to officially have Darth Vader be in this new movie. I mean, he's obviously a pillar of the Star Wars universe. He's one of my favorite characters, as evidenced by the fact that he's a part of my set. And having James Earl Jones just come back to the role feels right. You know what I mean? If you're a fan of Star Wars Rebels, the animated series, you know that James Earl Jones has been back filling the Vader shoes, the voice Vader shoes, that is, since his last appearance in Return of the Jedi. But having him actually in the movies, I think is going to be really special. Having that heavy breathing when Darth Vader walks on screen, whenever he appears in the movie, I think is going to be magical. It's going to take our breath away, and I cannot wait until December to see that moment happen. Also, EW has been putting up a lot about Rogue One this week on their website, so I'll throw a link to some of that in the description of this video so you can check out more of that. There are some great movie stills and production pictures if you want to learn more about this movie before we actually get to see it in December. The other story I wanted to cover today is about Independence Day Resurgence director Roland Emmerich. Even before mass audiences got to see this new movie for themselves, Emmerich is already gearing up for his next sci-fi epic. According to Variety, Universal has clinched the rights to the script of Moonfall, which he wrote back in 2012 with Spencer Cohen and Harold Closser. Closser and Emmerich have teamed up on a number of ventures in the last several years, including The Day After Tomorrow, 10,000 BC, 2012, Anonymous, White House Down, and Independence Day Resurgence. The story will reportedly revolve around a group of people who have to save the Earth after the moon falls out of orbit and starts plummeting to the planet. Now, there isn't a whole lot of information available about this project, but based on what we do know, it sounds like it's one drilling team away from being an Armageddon remake, which doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in this project, but, I'll withhold judgment until we actually see a trailer or get a better full synopsis of what this movie is actually going to be. Moon falling out of orbit, I think I'm just going to leave it for now. But, based on the list of movies that these guys have worked on together, I've only really liked The Day After Tomorrow, and that was over a decade ago, so yeah, that's another notch against this movie. For me personally, I mean, maybe you liked some of the other movies that I listed off that those guys were involved in, but it's not one that I'm super looking forward to. But, the fact that Roland Emmerich is involved, since we're talking about Independence Day Resurgence, I figured was a noteworthy thing to put in the rundown today. And speaking of Independence Day Resurgence, let's just go ahead and talk about the movie in our main segment, Your Feature Presentation. So Independence Day Resurgence is the sequel to the 1996 movie Independence Day, with director Roland Emmerich returning to both the director's and the writer's chair. The events of this movie, like the film itself, take place 20 years after the aliens first invaded Earth. This time around, we are reunited with some old characters, as well as introduced to new ones as the world tries to fend off another global invasion. So when I first walked out of the theater and was thinking about this movie, I thought, it's disappointing. It's not horrendous, but it just, seemed lacking. But then the more I thought about it, and as I was writing this review and really just letting it mull over in my mind, I realized this is a bad movie. I mean, it really sucks, like a lot. Long before this movie came out, news was spread that Will Smith would not be returning to reprise his role as Captain Stephen Hiller. After all, after 20 years, there were bound to be scheduling conflicts with some of the actors, and Smith was signed on to appear in the upcoming villain team-up movie Suicide Squad. Which is all well and good, but this movie had a giant Will Smith-sized hole in it that none of the other characters, old or new, stepped up to fill. Beyond being the main action star of the first movie, Will Smith also brought his signature humor. You could tell that he was riffing in some scenes and was able to pull off great one-liners with ease and flair.
That's what I call a close encounter.
In this new movie, we have Jesse T. Usher, who plays the son of Will Smith's character. The movie clearly wants him to fill Smith's shoes multiple times throughout the movie, and even when he goes for the one-liners, they just fall flat. I think if the 1996 movie could use any Will Smith quote to talk to the 2016 movie, it would probably use this one.
You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
One of the surprising and great parts of the original Independence Day was just how funny it was beyond Will Smith. It was seeing Jeff Goldblum and Judd Hirsch play off one another, it was situational humor, and other great moments that broke the tension.
We've got to stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
This time around, if you watch the trailers, it's pretty much all action with no nods really to any humor in the movie. If I had to guess why, it's because the humor in this movie really doesn't work. And without giving away any spoilers, the biggest offender for me personally was Nicholas Wright's character. He plays a bureaucrat who is all but tethered to Jeff Goldblum's character, for reasons. He is inept and out of place, both within the story and the movie. He goes for a very blunt brand of humor, and none of his bits landed with me. He went for the comedy way too hard, and in the process, I found myself not just not caring about his character, but almost rooting for the movie to justify killing him so we didn't have to deal with him anymore. And that's another thing that made me not care about this story, is the fact that most of these characters really aren't likable. A lot of them just seem kind of stuck up, and some of the relationships between them in their backstories really wasn't fully explained, and so I found myself just not caring about some of their conflicts on screen and why they were going at each other. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, obviously, but it just made a lot of their moments of tension and action sequences where they could potentially die. I didn't care because I didn't relate to any of the characters. They seemed boring. Even some of the old guard, which I had hoped would anchor this movie, didn't deliver either. I thought Jeff Goldblum lost some of the charm he had from the first movie, and while I understand that the relationship between Goldblum's and Judd Hirsch's characters wouldn't necessarily stay the same over 20 years, I had hoped that when they were together on screen, that it would have had a similar spark to the first movie. That it would have been fun like it was 20 years ago. And going back 20 years ago, even though we had really compelling characters, it was arguably the special effects that stole the show. Back then, filmmakers used a great combination of practical effects alongside of digital manipulation to create some truly memorable scenes. Today, we see very little in the way of practical shots as we are flooded with wall-to-wall CGI. It looks pretty good at times, but it felt like it lacked character. It made me think of Star Wars in a way. I think this movie was trying to invoke the nostalgia combined with new adventures and moments that we got in The Force Awakens, but it lands a lot closer to The Phantom Menace in that it felt so overbloated with CGI that we didn't have barely any room for relatable characters. Which is a shame. At its core, this was a movie that could have been great. It was building off of a great first movie, the premise for the sequel was good, but it didn't execute. Which is why I'm giving Independence Day Resurgence a 3.5 out of 10. It dropped the ball hard, but there are some good action sequences, and it was nice to see some of the old characters back together again. But if you're feeling nostalgic for the first movie, just go watch that. Maybe stream this when it hits Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. One last thing, Liam Hemsworth plays one of the leads in this film, and it seems like about half of his dialogue when he was in the pilot seat was just him doing his best Thor scream as he was in a dramatic moment. Hold on! That will do it for today's episode of Old, New, and Now Playing, and of course now is about when I would plug my Twitter handle and tell you to send in movie-related questions, which I would love for you to do, but instead I'm going to make a quick announcement. I'm going to be taking off most of next week, actually, so there will be no old or new reviews next week. There will be a Now Playing one, probably for the BFG, since I'm super jazzed about that movie, but the reason for this mini hiatus is that there are some things that I want to look at and retool for the show and make better for you guys, and I really just don't have the time to do that right now between putting out 3 episodes a week and the other stuff that I do outside of the show, so I wanted to take some time and just reassess the show, make some improvements, and in that time, I want you guys to reach out to me, leave comments in the comment section below, send me an email, hit me up on Twitter, but tell me, what do you think would be better? How could I make this show better for you guys? Things that you want to see improved, things that I'm not doing that you would like for me to do, and then also tell me what you like about the show, because it's great to hear what you think works, and I'll look at that and see if I can make that better. But I really just want to make the show overall work better and be better for you guys, because obviously you are why I do this show, and I want to make this the very best that it can be. So this obviously isn't going to be some massive summer hiatus. Like I said, I will be back this coming Friday with a Now Playing review for the BFG. Maybe if I get super ambitious, I might do an extra review for the Purge election year, because I'm super excited to see that one as well. So that one's a maybe. BFG is a definite though, so look for that on Friday. And guys, thank you so much for supporting this channel and for watching these videos. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, keep up with everything that we're doing here, and I'll see you next Friday with my take on the BFG.